are in the room and you see this ship here and you see these bullets here, you're not actually looking at objects. You're looking at object instances. Because the objects, they are the models. They are like prefabs that you clone, okay, that you repeat. You use them as models to create the instances here. So these are the things that actually behave, that actually move and then change direction and whatever game logic we add here. So we need to, in the ship, whenever we press the space key, we need to add an instance of the bullet. So first of all, let's delete the one that is in the room. We right click on it and select delete or hit Alt D. Let's go to the ship object, and here we're going to click add event. Okay, and in that event, instead of going to keyboard, we're going to key press and we're going to choose space. What's the difference when we go to the keyboard event and we go to the key press event? When you go to the keyboard event, if you keep the button you want to press down, if it keeps pressed, that event is going to happen all the time. So if we used that event, then the ship would basically spam bullets in the screen. It would be impossible to beat the player, so that wouldn't be much fun. It is interesting to have a challenge in the game. So that's why we use the press space. When you press the space bar, this event is going to happen and then do whatever actions you define. But for it to happen again, you have to release the space key and press it again so the other events happen. So, okay, now that we press the space bar, we're going to do Control Tab. Let's drag an execute code block. And to instantiate a bullet, we're going to use a function. Okay, and what is a function? A function is a routine of operations. It's a sequence of steps that your code is going to take internally to do something, to make something happen. In our case, we want to use instance underscore create. Okay, notice that difference from variables like direction and speed. Instance create has a different color. It's a yellowish orange color. Okay, so we're going to use that. Now, when you use functions, when you want to call functions, when you want to make them run, you have to use parentheses. You open and close parentheses, and as usual, add a semicolon in the end. And why is that? Because functions, they might receive arguments. Arguments are kind of settings that you're going to pass to a function. Okay, you're kind of tuning that function to tell what you want to happen. Okay, so for example, when you change the channel in the TV with a remote control, you are going kind of to call a function called change channel, and the argument is going to be the channel you want to. So if you want to go to the channel 42, you press 4 and 2, which are the arguments for that function, and then the TV will change channels. So if you want to know the arguments of that function, you can just look down here. You're going to see instance underscore create, and it receives x, y, and obj. X is the horizontal position, y is the vertical position, and obj is the object that is going to be used for creating the instance. So for x and y, we're simply going to type x and y. And wait, why is that? Okay, we could type here 40 and 238, I don't know, whatever number you can imagine. This would work, okay? So we're essentially passing coordinates. When we type x and y, that means we're using the x and y variables of the ship. Okay, remember we are drawing code in the ship object. So x is going to return the horizontal position of the ship, and y is going to return the vertical position of the ship. So if the ship is in the position 50-40, then this is going to translate internally to 50-40. Okay, so we use them like this because the bullets are always going to appear wherever the ship is standing. And finally, we need to pass a reference to the object that we created. So we simply type obj underscore, and if you wait long enough, you're going to see that GameMaker shows some suggestion for you. This is the autocomplete menu that you see in several programming interfaces and several IDEs. So one of the reasons we like to add OBJ or SPR or FNT in the beginning is because we can later easily reference things. Okay, so if you want to be a bit faster, you can just type OBJ underscore and then you select the bullet, which is this one here. And it's going to turn red because we have a bullet object. Okay, now let's click on this green check mark here to save, and we're going to give this a try. Let's click on run the game. wait for the project to be saved, for the code to be compiled, for the room to open along with our window. And there we go, we have our player here drifting in the space, and every time we press the space bar, then the bullets are going to shoot. Okay, they're going to be shot. So if you want to change the speed of the bullet, you can just go back to the bullet object in the create here, where it says execute a piece of code, and change to whatever you want. I think 10 is going to be better, okay, because we can sort of spam bullets right now. So one thing that is interesting to do here as well is give some sort of cooldown for whenever we are pressing the spacebar. So we can't just spam press the spacebar and then no enemies are going to be able to destroy us. Okay, so we're going to do this in the next video. To make a cooldown effect, we're going to the create event here, and we're going to drag this piece of code. So we're going to declare variables. We're going to declare instance variables. And to declare them, you just have to type the name you want and then assign something. Okay, that's essentially how you declare variables in GameMaker. It couldn't be simpler. So what we're going to do here is we're going to type cooldown underscore time, and we're going to set it to be 0. And we're also going to use cooldown underscore time, actually cooldown underscore duration, and we're going to set it as 250. This number here is defined in milliseconds. Okay, so they are not seconds, they are milliseconds. If you want 1 second, you have to use 1,000. If you want to use a quarter of a second, you use 250. Okay, so we declare these variables here. Let's click on the green check mark. We're going now to where we spawn bullets. We need to make a verification here. Okay, so if we press space, we need to check if we are allowed to spawn bullets. So we're going to use an if block. So first of all, you type if, then open and close parentheses, and then open and close curly braces. The if block is when you want to ask a question to your code. Okay, and if that question is true, if whatever it is here is true, then the code inside here is going to run. So if you ask here, for example, if 2 plus 3 equals to 5, that's true, then this is going to run. If you ask here if cats equals to dogs, this is false, so this is not going to run. Okay, so the question that we want to ask here is, remember, if you're on a ship and you go to the create, you have a cooldown time and a cooldown duration. Okay, so what we're going to ask here is if cooldown underscore time plus cooldown underscore duration, and we ask if this is lesser than current underscore time. Okay, current underscore time is the number of milliseconds since the game began. Okay, so for instance, if you open the room and then some time passes, current time might return something like 5 seconds, for example. And since this is 0 plus 250 milliseconds, for example, this is going to be true, so you are allowed to shoot. So we drag this line where it says instance create to be inside this block. Okay, and there is one detail. Whenever you are allowed to shoot, okay, wherever you shoot a bullet, you have to set cooldown underscore time to be current underscore time. So you have to wait exactly for cooldown duration until you are able to shoot again. Okay, and after we set that, we instantiate the bullet. So let's click on run the game now. We wait for the code to compile, for everything to be ready for us, and there we go, we have a window. If I spam press space, I'm pressing like crazy this space bar now, but you can only see 4 bullets a second, and you can change that to whatever you want. If you use 100, you'll be able to spawn 10 bullets per second. If you type 1,000, then that's 1 bullet per second. It's up to you to tune the game to whatever difficulty you want to give to your players, to how evil you are to your players. Okay? In the next video, let's make some enemies so we can shoot at them. enemies are going to be very similar to how bullets work. Okay, they're going to move at a certain speed to a certain position, and they're going to come from a certain position of the screen. Let's go to the sprites window, we right click and choose create sprite. This is going to be SPR_enemy. Now we're going to use edit sprite and we create a new sprite. We're going to use the size. Let's make them bigger. We're going to use 64 by 64 pixels. Okay, so this is going to be a challenge for the player. Now we're going to choose the polygon tool. We're going to choose red as the fill color, so it looks like this. And as usual, you draw the enemy as you want. Okay, I'm going to make it look like a triangle here, maybe a spike, I don't know. So yes, let me make this a bit better, like this. Again, you are the one who are going to define how the enemy is going to look like. Okay, so I'm going to make it look like that. A fighter here. Okay, now to do that, we click on the green check mark, so we save it. We now click on the center button, so the origin is in the middle, just in case we want to apply any rotations later. And now we click OK. Now for the object, we right click on objects, create object, then obj_enemy, and we set the sprite to be SPR_enemy. Okay, so to test the enemy out, let's go to the room here, double click, and we're going to add one enemy at the right portion of the screen. So in objects, we click here, we choose obj_enemy, and we click where we want it to appear. So this is how it's going to look like. The enemy is going to blast through the player in that position. So we need to do two things. We need to make it move, and we need to check for collisions between the bullets and the player. First of all, we go to the enemy object, add event, and create. In the control tab, we're going to drag the execute code script, and here we can type direction equals to 180, so it points to the left, and speed is going to be, let's use 5. Okay, it's probably a bit too fast, but it's good to give a challenge to the player. Let's test this out. We're going to click here on play the game. Let's wait for the code to compile, so we test the enemy speed, and there we go. So we have the enemy and they are moving towards the player. So also we need to go here and click on add event, select other, outside room, and with your outside room we're going to destroy the enemy instance, just like we did with the object. Okay, so now this is what we're going to do. We're going to click on add event and we're going to check collision. And whenever we add a collision event, we need to check for collisions in a one-by-one basis. So you check collisions between enemies and ships, enemies and bullets, enemies and other enemies if you want. So let's start with bullet. Okay, so when we collide with a bullet, we want to destroy both the enemy and the bullet. So you go to the control tab here, you're going to drag this code block, and to destroy the enemy, remember you are in the enemy object here, you're making a script there, you're going to type instance_destroy, open and close parentheses, and add a semicolon. This is enough for destroying the enemy, but you also have to destroy the bullet. Okay, so how do we do this? The instance destroy doesn't receive the object, the instance which you're going to destroy as a parameter. Okay, you call it in the scope of whatever you want to destroy, and right here we are in the scope of the enemy. We need to change the scope to the object we collided, and that other object can be referenced with the keyword other. Okay, you have self, which is the reference to the enemy, which is where you're currently at, and you have other, which is a reference to the object you collided with. So to change the scope to that other, we just type with, and between parentheses we add other, and we open and close curly braces, and inside these braces we're going to type instance_destroy. Okay, so let's test this out. When we shoot bullets, we should be able to stop the enemies from moving and save the ship. Okay, so let's wait for it. There we go. Now if I press space, I shoot a bullet and the enemy disappeared. Now we need to make the enemy also destroy the player. So we click on add event, then collision. Now we choose ship, so we collide with the ship, and we drag a code block here, but we're going only to destroy the other, element, which is a ship. So with other, opening close curly braces, instance underscore destroy. This is enough for destroying our ship. Okay, so there is actually a challenge for the player. They have to evade the ship or just shoot at a ship. Okay, so they survive. Okay, I was actually supposed to let the enemy live and touch the player. That was just a reflex. Okay, let's give this a try. And after we are done with that, we're going to be making the enemies dynamically spawn in the game. Okay, because right now we manually added an enemy instance here, but we need to make them to dynamically appear. Okay, let's learn how to do this in the next lesson.